your singing voice is your most powerful voice?
Christian music for a long time got complacent.
Now maybe that's plundering Leviathan, or maybe it's getting sucked into a culture instead of setting the culture.
You would not have said that 100 years ago.
You're triggering him, Ryan. You're triggering him.
I'm just gonna keep on poking him until any time that I've had a spiritual experience, my emotions were involved. We are willing to worship to a certain point until we start to get uncomfortable. I was raised Reformed, and it was just the piano for people with a microphone and a lady who didn't know how to use a tambourine.
We went to the same church.
Let's see. Speaking of ticks,
Are you ready? Welcome back to Plundering Leviathan, a podcast of North Center Church, where our aim is to reclaim culture's gold for Christ's glory. We're here this morning to talk about the Christian music industry. We've got Ryan Zimmer here. Welcome, Ryan.
well, thank you.
Hey, man.
And Pastor Jeremiah, as usual. And the guy on the left, Steve.
And you haven't been up that long.
No.
I mean, clearly,
Yeah.
because we had a start time that was earlier than when you arrived.
Yeah, but we're over that already, I think.
We've worked through that.
And we're moving on.
I mean, because you live a long ways away.
Traffic was bad.
Traffic was bad. So it was my pleasure to get up early and make coffee and go get Ryan from his hotel and get here and get all set up on time. That way you could battle traffic from 4 blocks away.
It was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was turkeys and dogs and all kinds of things. Present turkey not included.
Okay.
So, Ryan, we want to get to know you. Can you tell our church family a little bit about yourself, how you came to know Jesus?
I was adopted when I was 14 months old. I had the privilege of growing up in a Christian family my whole life. Yeah, I went to Christian school, went to church 3 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. I got to know God in high school. Freshman year of high school, our school did a fall spiritual retreat every year, and that was when I first committed my life to Christ. Everything changed after that. Went off to college, and that's where I met this guy. We did a lot of music together, and
We were playing guitar together before the end of the first day. I've got a photo of Ryan and I playing guitar in this sort of like community lounge day one. We hadn't even gone to bed the first night of college, and Ryan and I busted out the acoustic guitars.
And yeah, I've been stuck to his shoe ever since.
Beautiful.
I ended up there for 2 years, dropped out. I was touring full time. I wanted to be a rock star, was what it was. And so chasing after that, and Lord had a much different plan for my life. I ended up, long story short, I ended up in Colorado with a church out there. And that's really where I started to cut my teeth in ministry, working full-time as a worship pastor at a big mega church out there. Ended up getting married and moving back to Minneapolis area. Went through a nasty divorce, moved back to Colorado at that time, and thought I was done in ministry, thought I was almost done with music, period. Was working in, the business world, and God, again, said, no, we're not done with you. We're just getting started here. And so through mentors and just very sovereignly placed people in my life, got back into ministry and realized the joy of ministry itself on a whole different level as well. I think especially when you're able to lead out of brokenness, I feel like God really cleansed me of a lot of pride that I'd had. Ended up moving back to the Wilmer, Minnesota area. Met my wife, and we have 2 kids now. I own a company called Advanced Ministry Technologies, where we do audio, video, live stream integration for primarily churches. We've grown, and
so when he saw our podcast setup, he was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
this is legit."
This is very archaic. Recording on an iPhone with a wired speaker. Yeah, this is great. So you're going to help us.
All right.
Yeah.
So a bona fide expert, a follower of Jesus, one who has spent some time in the dark night of the soul that we talk about. You know, my wife often says that a person who has been rarely tested can be rarely trusted, or something like that. She'll correct me later, but the gist of it is, as a Christian, we're going to go through trials, and when our faith is tested, then it's hardened, it's stronger. We usually come out on the other side of it with a better idea of who we are in Jesus and who He is to us, and then we can minister on a level that we couldn't before. You know.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because so I was running sound for Jason Gray last weekend. And something he said in his show was, hope is where hurt was.
Ooh.
And that one just landed for me.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Well, thank you for the abridged version of your testimony. We'll have to do this again, and we'll just get the full Ryan Zimmer story.
Okay. That's going to be a long podcast.
I'd love it. Yeah, we'd love to do long form. 2.5, 3 hours, wouldn't we?
That'd be great.
We could do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody would watch, but people are doing that right now, and they're listening, especially when you have a captivating character here.
I'll tell you, and Ryan's, man, his testimony is captivating.
But today, the context of this conversation is the Christian music industry.
Christian music within the context of the gathered assembly of the saints. And what that has become today via the means of the CMI, or the Christian music industry. The Christian music industry is sort of a thing in and of itself, and it has absolutely shaped the singing of the church. I'd love to hear Ryan take us even deeper. So in one way or another, you've essentially given your life to singing. Teaching singing, to leading singing, to recording singing, and incidentally, Ryan has a pretty good voice.
Yeah, I was stalking him a little bit online, and he does. He does have a very good voice.
Ryan has recorded several of the albums that I did years ago with a music group that I was with, and we roped him into singing on every album, at least a couple of songs. We did this song called Unremembered Places. The album was called Unremembered Places. This is the title track, and it was this idea of, in a world where there's places that are dying spiritually without the gospel, who's going to go to those places? And who's going to put a stake in the ground and say, this isn't popular, I'm never going to build a name for myself here. I'm not going to build a brand for myself here. I'm going to live a life that's just unknown here. But for the sake of these people who are starving for the bread of life, I'm going to preach. I'm going to teach. This is where I plant my flag.
Yeah.
And so Ryan comes in at the end of this song, and it's pretty awesome.
All right, let's hear it.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Is that cool?
Was it, 16 years ago.
Oh,
wow. You guys go way back.
Yeah.
Time flies, right?
Yeah. Making me feel old right now.
I think this topic is so interesting. When we put together a service on a Sunday morning, there's a lot that goes into it that maybe people don't know about. Why the songs are chosen, in what order they're chosen, the volume of the instruments, the key, all of these things are important when it comes to music. So maybe, I don't know, what would the best first question be to kind of lead us into that?
Yeah, let's get there. First of all, you're giving your life to singing. Why is singing important? Why would somebody say, I have one life to live and I'm going to devote it to singing?
Somebody much wiser than me, and I don't know who it was, read this quote of, music is the language that speaks when words aren't enough.
Sounds like something I said.
There's a chance.
It could have been me.
I would have remembered your name next to that quote.
Okay.
But music is the language of the soul. That's a very powerful sword to wield.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of just, I don't know if I chose music as more God gave me that gift to use music. And I would say in my teens and all throughout my 20s, I wielded that sword very freely and very carelessly at times, to the point where you start to think that, oh, this is mine to have. And when I talked just briefly about, breaking myself of that pride, that was the root of it, I think. I mean, one thing that I didn't mention was there was a period of a few months when I was on staff at this big church where I lost my voice. Literally could not sing. Barely could talk at times. I feel like that was a spiritual thing where God was saying, "No, I gave it and I can take it away." And me having to reevaluate as well. Okay, who am I?
Because your identity was almost lost.
Absolutely.
In the losing of your voice.
Yep.
Because your identity for Ryan Zimmer was tied to Ryan Zimmer the singer.
Yeah. Well, even so, Ryan, the worship leader at this big church.
Ooh, okay.
We had all the shiny toys and all and God said, "No, hold on a second. We're going to remind you who you really are."
Okay.
And had to do a lot of self-reflection and
So singing is, you said, is a weapon. It's a powerful weapon, and you can wield that weapon for great effect for the kingdom of God, or you can wield that weapon unto great damage.
Yep, absolutely.
So you're leading music now for your local church.
Yep.
Do you have a title?
Worship director.
A worship director?
Yep.
Okay, we should come back to that. We changed the title of it used to be worship leader here, and the job description was leading music. And so what I fought back against was this idea that that's the worship part, and the sermon is a different thing. The fellowship is a different thing.
Yeah.
But the singing, that's the worship part. And so we said, no, we're not going to give you the title as worship leader because I don't like it. We're going to give you the title of music leader. But we can, I digress. What's congregational singing? What is that in your church? What does that look like?
I'm at an exciting point where our church is growing and it's vibrant and it's just exciting to be a part of, to see God move. And so I feel like when you're in a place where God is moving, worship is the overflow of that, of what God is doing in your life. And when you're aware of that, music's just a small portion of that. We should be thinking of worship in a much bigger picture, a much bigger light than just, I'm singing on Sunday morning for 20 minutes for 5 songs, or however many your church decides to do.
Yeah.
And so that's I think the heartbeat of our church at this point is seeing God move. Lives given to Christ. We're baptizing people every quarter. That's exciting.
It is exciting.
And so how can you not worship? That's
music is a part of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You said small part. I'd push back there and say, no, I think it's actually a huge part. I just don't think it's the sum total.
Sure. That makes sense. And I feel like we as a culture probably put a lot more on it than maybe this is me swinging the pendulum back the other way of where I thought music was just all there was at one point.
Let's tap on that just a sec. Can you guys define, I'm just a dumb layman. I don't know. I drive a truck for a living, and I didn't do seminary, haven't led in churches. So for a guy like me that's just sitting here going, well, what is worship? Can the experts in the room define the term worship? Because when I think worship, me personally, and I think a lot of people out there, when they hear the word worship, they probably think, well, that's singing. That's where we play the music and we sing together, right? Is that worship? You already intimated that it's not. What is worship then?
So what I intimated?
Could be the right word. It's early. Could be the wrong word.
What I intimated, I don't know, maybe. What I intimated was that music is not equal sign worship. It is a means of worship. To Ryan's point, worship is something deeper, higher, bigger, and broader than just this one expression of it. Music is an expression, a means, a vehicle of worship, but worship is something more.
Yeah, and if you want the seminary answer of worship would be, worship is, our response to God for who he is. If you want the Facebook version of it, it's what's most important in your life. That's what you worship.
So everybody worships.
Yep, it's just, what is it?
Even unbelievers worship.
Yep. No, absolutely.
That's what you are, right? You are a worshiping creature.
Yep. Whether it's money, power, fame, or God,
yeah,
you worship something.
Absolutely. Okay, that's good. So worship is taking something that you hold supremely valuable and showing it as valuable in your life in some way, right? Yep. Whatever that may be. So like if you're a Timberwolves fan, like you're just like, man, I live and die by the Timberwolves. I can't wait till the next game. Obviously, those of us in this room are not living and dying by what happens with the Timberwolves. But if you're that person, and maybe there's one of you out there, you're talking about the Timberwolves everywhere you go. You're like, did you see that play? Did you see that? Did you see so-and-so had 44 points and 13 steals? And so you're talking...
10 touchdowns!
The starting pitcher was just like awesome in that basketball game. I don't know. That's how much I know about it. I used to be that guy when it came to sports. So actually there was a time in my life when I did not know Christ, and sports was somewhat of an idol to me, if you will. I mean, or it was something I worshipped and I talked about, and my emotions would rise or fall with the result of the last game. So if you're that Timberwolves fan out there and you're going to talk about the Timberwolves, you're going to talk about the players, you're going to exalt them in such a way that they're made much of, and so they're worshiping in that way.
Yep.
And so as Christians, when we worship, we are taking what we hold most supremely valuable, namely Christ, and we're saying, he's amazing. Look at what he's done. Look at his creation. Look at his sacrifice. Look at what he's done, right? So we're magnifying and making him look closer to who he really is. And you do that not only with music, but you do it with your giving.
That's right.
What will you spend your money on shows what you hold most supremely valuable.
Oh, yeah.
Right, what you spend your time doing or not doing declares what you hold most supremely valuable. Mm-hmm. Whether you're studying the Bible or whether you're studying the latest sports stats, you're putting your time into something, and in doing that, you're showing what you hold most supremely valuable. So all of that really is worship.
Yep.
Okay. So what I want to do is I want to get into the singing in the church and how we have singing that looks like it does today. Because congregational singing has not always looked like it does in Zimmer's church gathering today. So you get all the way back to let me give a quick sketch up to the dawn of the church age, and then you see how we can go from there.
Sure.
There was congregational singing before there was time. Job 38:7 says, the stars were singing as God is making the world. The stars, however you define stars, angels, actual physical stars, whatever, before there are people, God has congregational singing. So that predates you and me.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty awesome. We have music as early as Genesis 4. Tubal-Cain is creating instruments. So that's been important to us since the beginning of human history. Of all the positions throughout ancient Israel, when God is speaking of how he's going to provide for his people, he speaks of divine provision from the people for the Levites, the priests, and divine provision from the people for the singers. So the singing ministry has been important to God since the beginning of his corporate people. So then you stretch all the way through the Old Testament, the New Testament. Jesus we see him singing with the last thing that he does with his followers before he goes to the cross is leads them in a hymn. So they're singing together. When Paul and Silas are in prison, how are they preaching to their souls and to the prisoners around them? Acts tells us that they're singing. It's midnight, they're miserable, and they're singing songs that they have stored up in their hearts for such a time as this. And the verb for singing is the same verb used when Jesus leads his followers in a hymn right before the cross. So it's as if he was teaching them, here's how to sing in the midst of suffering. And then they're doing it in prison. All the way through the first time that God ever saves a people, ever, Exodus chapter 15, their first response, they've been rescued out of Egypt, and they sing. Their first response. Exodus 15. They're standing beside the sea, and they sing the song of Moses. Fast forward to Revelation 15. They are standing not beside the sea, but on the sea, and they're singing the song of Moses and the Lamb. And what are they doing in this eternal paradise? They're singing. So it predates human history. It stretches beyond our human history here into eternity, and it maps out onto every significant moment of the gathered people of God. They celebrate the significant moment, slaying of Leviathan. What do they do when they slay Leviathan? They sing a slaying Leviathan kind of song.
There's a song idea there.
Awesome. There is.
Yeah.
There is. When David takes off Goliath's head, and that serpent giant is dead, what do the women do? They sing a serpent slaying kind of song, a particular verb that's used to describe Pharaoh's army dead, buried in the waters. Goliath, dead, licking the dust, like the serpent predicted in Genesis 3:15. That gets to the early church, and the church has always been a singing church. In fact, the very first reference that we ever have, a secular reference to the local church, was a guy writing to the ruler complaining that Christians gather together every Sunday to sing as if to a god. But like that's what he described the church gathering. Now, he didn't describe the preaching, as important that is. He didn't describe the ordinances, as important as they are. His description of the early church gathering was singing. So it's been from the beginning. And now, I don't know if you could take us through some of the changes of music throughout church history, but how do we get to where we're at today?
Music, as far as mainstream has gone, is only about 100 years old. So it's
if that, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a spot on the spectrum at this point. So I think we're still figuring it out.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of human history.
Yeah.
In that regard. But when it was first, 100 years ago, Christian music was pretty much what there was. There was no such thing as secular mainstream music until you started hearing like the old like swing band and those types of things. But really it was the Isaac Watts that were the mainstream composers, so to speak.
You're arguing that Christian music up until like 100 years ago was basically what there was.
To a degree, I would say. I mean, you had like the sailor drinking songs and those types of things, but then Isaac Watts took those, rewrote the lyrics on some of these, and that's how we ended up with some of our most beloved hymns that people are arguing are, well, those are the classic. Okay, well, you would not have said that 100 years ago.
That's right.
So, yeah, I mean, as far as this whole spectrum of music, this is such a small part. Now, would I say that secular music And even anti-Christian music has taken over in the last 40 years, 50 years. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think it's great that, we're having this conversation of, well, how do we take it back?
Right. So it belongs to God. We've already established that. You're saying in the last 5 decades, 100 years, you've got the secular mainstream that sort of took over from the big personalities like Elvis, Johnny Cash, or whatever you want, however you want to classify him, to the
Beatles. Yeah, I mean, there's just tons of
so they took over the mainstream music. So mainstream was Christian, was taken over by the secular music industry.
Yep.
So the question is, it doesn't belong to them, it belongs to God and his people. How do we take it back?
Yep.
Cool.
Well, here's one thing. This could maybe ruffle some feathers, but I feel like Christian music for a long time got complacent in the sense where they were repackaging the same thing, where the Elvises, the Beatles, all these different artists came out with something new and fresh, and it made people feel a different way. And then Christian music was kind of just repackaging the same thing, and this really was evident, I think, in maybe the early 2000s. Christian music at that time, they were pumping out some cheesy stuff
in the 2000s.
Yeah, like early 2000s, and I feel like that's when you saw the big shift away.
What were they doing in the 50s?
Oh, back in the 50s?
Yeah.
We're doing swing dance. Yeah.
That was your generation.
Sure, swing dance, and I don't know. I'm not that old.
Oh, you're not?
Oh, come on, give me a break.
Oh, sorry.
And so I would say it, not since the last maybe 5 to 10 years has Christian music really started to innovate again and become original. And you're starting to see a little bit of a shift now again back to Christian music with like the Forrest Franks and Ann Wilson and Zach Williams. They're this original, and they have a fresh voice and a fresh approach to music, but they're using it for Christ.
Yeah. So are you saying one of the ways that we plunder it is originality?
I think so. Authenticity.
Authenticity?
People can tell when you're just repackaging something.
Okay.
I truly believe that. Whether it's on a recording or whether it's live in a big stage, like a big arena, or whether it's on your stage at church, you leading worship, people can tell when you're authentic or when you're just mailing it in.
So let's go there. I think probably the first place that we're going to plunder anything is within the context of the church. I think that's where the plundering is going to happen. If we don't do it as local churches, we're not going to do it. It's not going to happen. Now, you guys could push back, but I'm going to argue. I think the plundering takes place within the context of the local church. Jesus says the gates of hell aren't going to stand against what? The church, the local church, and that the gates of hell is like we've talked about is a defensive picture. So the church isn't on the defense, guarding themselves from the attack of the enemy, though the enemy is on the defense, guarding itself from the attack of the church, local churches. So in the context of the local church, how do we plunder it? So the question is, when you're coming with this weapon that you've talked about, singing is a weapon, and you're coming in and you're going to do battle with your local church on a Sunday morning, what's going into that preparation time? Volume and lighting, and what kinds of songs are you going to sing? Are there certain songs that you're not going to sing for one reason or another? Walk us through what goes in to Ryan Zimmer's thinking as you plan to take your sword out and go to battle with your church on Sunday.
That is a loaded question, and I feel like context in your congregation is everything. And so for me, on a Sunday morning, as a worship leader, I'm thinking in the context of the people in the congregation and where do we want to go. And so when I say, music's a part of it, but it's not the whole experience, I'm working in lockstep with my pastor of, okay, here's the message this morning, here's the scripture. We're both reading and meditating on that throughout the week. Where do we want to go? Where are our people? And what are the ways that we can get them there? And so when we talk about music being the language of the soul, that's powerful. And so as the worship director,
or music director, if you will, you could, either way.
Yeah. But in the things that I say, the ways that I interact in between service, before service, after services, those all play a part into where are we getting our congregation, how are we getting them there. We want them to leave with this thought or this idea, and so it is really kind of a
thematic. So that's this piece.
Yep.
What's the thematic trajectory of this gathering, and how do we use music to serve in funneling people's hearts and minds in that direction?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then there's a lot of coordinating of volunteers and those type of things too. I mean, we've got a team in our worship ministry of about 50 people, and so any given Sunday there's about 20 of them that are involved in some capacity or another.
Yeah, but that's about what we have here, right? Usually 50 or
give or take,
give
a couple of dozen.
Yeah, good. Yep.
And whether it's a team of 200 or a team of 2, God calls us where we are. Yeah. And to minister and grow in that spot. So
do you light the stage a certain way?
Well, and that's a great segue to when we talk about worship as a, it's not just the music portion of it. It's the lights, it's the way that the stage is set up. My goal is to remove any distraction that people might have. Okay. And that includes personally. We don't know what people are walking in with. That's right. Necessarily the baggage that they're carrying on their hearts. And so if we can create that hour where it's just them and God, I feel like that's a successful piece of it. And that's why I say, like, music's a small piece of it. Now, if you do music really poorly, that can be a distraction. Sure. If you go way over the top, now we're swinging the pendulum the other way. Not saying that we shouldn't be striving for excellence. We absolutely should.
John Piper calls it undistracted excellence. Yep. Which is exactly the two pieces that you've said. That's what he was striving for in his services, was undistracted excellence.
Exactly. Yep. And so you don't want to just throw up a guy who's just got a guitar and wants to be involved because he has a guitar. But at the same time, and this is probably where I've swung a little bit back since my days at this large church where we hired musicians. But yeah, whether it's that or how the stage is set up, if you would look at our stage, nobody is center on the worship team. We're all kind of spread.
Or music team, if you will.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're triggering him, Ryan. You're triggering him.
I'm just gonna keep on poking him until all
keep
of a sudden,
poking him. Because he's gonna keep poking back. Trust me.
The cross is center.
That's right.
On us.
I watched a couple of your music sessions at your church. You were off to the side, leading not from the center, but off on the right side of the stage, and you had other singers that were off to the left. Even when you had a choir there, your choir, your Easter service, for instance, was over on the left side. And so I noticed that, the cross was center. No single person was centered, because you don't want to take people's eyes off of what's most important and put them onto you as the focus.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, even go so far as to, I don't know if people notice this, but I don't lead every song on a Sunday morning. I'm always pulling in others, giving other people voice, and letting other people lead. A different person leading that song will speak to somebody else differently.
That's right.
Than just one single voice.
So you mentioned key. Let's go there. Guys in the church tend not to sing, in part because the songs are written in a key that they can't reach.
Can confirm.
Can confirm.
I try to sing them. Yeah, but it's really hard. I have to go really low down here to reach anything.
Yep. Right. If I ever lead, or when I lead, I have to change the key that we always sing that song in, because I can't sing. I can't sing in that key. So what cuts through the radio waves is that high tenor voice. And so that's what became popular. Chris Tomlin's voice is insane awesome. I love it. I don't care what you think about it. It's my opinion. And what makes it so attractive is how it just cuts through everything because of how high it is. He's a tenor. And so it's very, very rare that you will ever hear a baritone on the radio. You'll never hear a lead bass on the radio. It's the tenor. Christians, we're just good at co-opting. Like, let's go back to even polity. Like, why do churches have boards? Because it works really well in the business world. Why do we have trustees? That's not a biblical thing. It's not to say it's anti-biblical. It's not biblical. It's just something that works really well in the business world. And so churches co-opted things that were working well out here and said, well, why can't we do that here in the church? I think we do the same thing with music. We see things that work really well out in the world, and we say, oh, let's use that. Now, maybe that's plundering Leviathan, or maybe it's getting sucked into a culture instead of setting the culture. All that to say, the vast majority of our music is in the church is written for tenors and led by tenors because it pierces through, it just leads really well. But the men, by and large, can't sing tenor. And so, for a variety of reasons, I think lyrical content is also part of it. We've maybe in the 2000s, maybe in the 90s, maybe earlier, we started singing very effeminate songs like Jesus Is My Boyfriend. And most men, if they're men, they're like, I don't want to sing that.
Yeah.
I want to, God created me to be a shamar, a warrior. I want to sing warrior songs. And we just say, we're going to sing like, I just want to touch your face. I want to know you more. And we're like, I don't want to sing that. But we're getting sidetracked.
Oh, I love it. Keep going. You're speaking my language right now.
I want our men to sing. How do you cultivate the men with their God-given ranges and their God-given masculine proclivities to sing in your church?
You're absolutely right. A lot of, I would say 97% of your mainstream Christian music is tenor voices at this point. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Phil Wickham is my favorite.
Love Phil
artist
Wickham's
at this
voice
point.
and his lyrical writing.
And Brandon Heath. Or not Brandon Lake.
Yep.
Sorry. Brandon Heath is great too. Sorry.
Yeah. Brandon Lake can get higher than most ladies. Like, and that guy's falsetto is
lower though too.
Yeah, right.
Like, if you and I were in men's choir at Northwestern together.
Yes, we were.
And I am a tenor through and through. I was put as a bass too. The lowest.
Really?
It was simply because I could hit those notes.
Because your range is just that awesome.
Well, I am a tenor by default, but there's just a lack of...
You can go low.
Yeah, well, I can't anymore. I could.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've Papa Mama'd. But, well, and that's just the nature of, like, just what I do,
It is, right, yep.
So, anyway, I did a research paper on this in college when I was... It was for a church leadership class. It was about the worship experience in general. And so lights, your decibel levels in the room, all those things. And found that dimmed lights, not black, but dimmed lights where, when the lights are low enough, it starts to get a little grainy on your peripherals, if that makes sense. And then also, when your decibel level is high enough where you don't necessarily hear yourself sing, but not so loud where you're hurting people. Which I'm also going to argue as a sound person, 9 times out of 10, if somebody's complaining that it's too loud, it's not too loud, it's just your mix is wrong. I digress. That being said, when we sing loud... Well, let me give you an example. If you scream, let's say you're frustrated and you scream, are you screaming, oh? Or
let's say somebody loaded your truck. And you're just frustrated with how how it looks, not because the load's bad, you're just having a bad morning.
Sure.
And you just want to get it out there. Let's keep going. I just want to give it more of a concrete illustration.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing me back in.
That's good. Yeah. You're welcome.
You don't give out a low, like, whoa,
right
type. It's a, right? Well, when you start to activate that part of your range, and I'm not saying it's all just vocal, it's emotional, all those things, you're releasing endorphins. And when you release endorphins, we have to be careful on toting this fine line of emotional manipulation and spiritual activation. But anytime that I've had a spiritual experience, my emotions were involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so if we can create that environment where people are activating that part, they're singing out loud emotionally, and we can start to engage.
Yeah. Man, so many questions, and part of it, even if we don't get answered, I just love it that we can ask these questions and get people thinking about it. So here's one that I just love to hear your response to, is you talk about dimming the lights, okay? So go there, you talk about like the graininess on the peripherals, double click on that for a minute. What do you mean, and where are you going with that?
Well, we're such a visual culture that, and you can be distracted by 20 different things when you're standing in the middle of church and trying to focus on God. Oh, Steve's shirt has like very parallel lines.
You are looking very dapper today.
Your hoodie, I actually bought that same hoodie, or the same style of hoodie, because I liked it so much, and I saw one of you guys' podcasts. I'm like, oh, that's a nice.
I know that hoodie.
Yeah. So I actually ended up getting one of those. All of a sudden, I'm playing these things into my head, and I've lost 30 seconds of worship, or music, or singing, or whatever it might be, preaching. We're the 20-second culture at this point, where if you don't have my attention within 20 seconds, all of a sudden it's on something else. And all of a sudden it's on something else. And I'm looking at Jeremiah's book collection and looking at all of his old books. That's where, if we can at least remove some of that peripheral distraction, I see that as a positive.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, I also have people who have told me that doing that means that we worship Satan, because darkness means evil.
Oh, sure.
And so there's the other spectrum of that too, and having to have that conversation with them and offer as much grace as I possibly can in that. But it's really the distraction piece of it.
So your motivation in the dimming of the lights is to eliminate distraction, focus attention on the moment, which is the elevation of the one who conquered the cross at the center.
Yep.
Through the worship vehicle of singing.
Our Sunday mornings should be a meditation on the Word of God, and meditating on. So for me, I'm wanting to create a meditating hour.
Yeah.
Of whatever Paul, my pastor, is putting forth, that theme or message. And so whether it's in the scripture, whether it's in the music, or even announcements, we're meditating as a body together. And if you know how to meditate, I guess I've never done yoga.
Should have people do this when we do the announcements from now on?
There you go.
Like, now's the announcements time.
Yeah, right.
Jonathan Parnell, one of our local pastors, argues that we should not sideline announcements as some peripheral extra thing, but that there is a holiness even in our announcements if they're done right.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what you're saying.
Oh, our Connections pastor does our announcements on Sunday mornings, and I've never had announcements that I've looked forward to more than his. And he's engaging. He engages the body.
Yeah.
And he's communicating, obviously, things that are going on.
Yeah.
But he does it in a way where it really makes it feel like, oh, we're a family.
Are the lights dimmed when he's giving the announcements?
No.
What about during the sermon?
No.
So it's mostly just during the music.
Yeah. They're not like full house lights during the sermon, though.
They're not.
No.
And then during the music, when the house lights are dim, you've got lighting obviously on the stage, because there's music to be read.
And we've got it on the sides, like we've got uplights, those types of things on the side and everything. So it's not like we're in, pitch black.
So if I'm sitting back in the chairs or the pews, I think you have chairs there, back in the chairs, and I'm
Who has pews anymore? I mean,
North Center. I love pews.
Oh, we have pews.
Yeah, but if I'm sitting in the congregation and I'm worshiping through music in that time, the lights are dim where I'm sitting. Where are my eyes gonna see light?
On our screens, the lyrics, because that's where we're wanting people to, be able to see that. And then we try to draw it in on the cross. Now, little side plug here is churches weren't designed for modern worship if they're built pre-2000.
You're saying,
I should say,
the church buildings aren't designed for modern singing, like
the modern worship where we see it now, like with a worship band, those types of things, both audio, lighting, visual, all of that. So most churches that you walk into were not originally designed for a modern, music approach. So most of them have been retrofitted for that. Our building is no different in that regard.
Yeah.
So we, at one point had a single speaker up in the.
Yeah, we still have that. It doesn't work, but it's still mounted up there, I think.
And the sound system was originally designed as like a speech system where music was a piano and just sang along with the piano. And so then as far as house lights go, we've had to add dimmable lights or different lighting scenes, those types of things. And so this all has been retrofitted, where unless you are going into a church that has been built after the 2000 or so, that's usually what you're running into.
So Ryan led music at the church that I was a part of in Nebraska a couple of times, and I don't know if this is probably before you came there. When my family moved there, our speakers were 2 car speakers that they had jacked from somebody's car, and like legit 2 car speakers on the side, and then to turn them on you had to go into this room behind the pulpit. And so when we would adjust volume, like during the service or something, you'd have people walking behind the preacher to go back in this back room, then they stick their head out to like kind of get a thumbs up on whether or not it was but part of this, I'm going to argue, yes. One of the things that I don't like about the modern church buildings, I say modern, that's not the right word. The vast majority of church buildings, whatever time they were built, it's all one directional. So you have the music leader looking at the congregation. You have the congregation looking at the music leader. I've been in buildings that the seating is more of a half circle or almost a circle. And here's why I think that's important, and here's where Steve is going to push back on your lights being dimmed. We dim the lights here too. Just putting it out there, like we're trying to figure out, should we be dimming the lights? Should you be dimming the lights? I think motivation is a really important thing for all this. Why do you wear what you wear on a Sunday morning? Your motivation behind that is so important. You can dress up in a what is it? A 3-piece suit, 4-piece suit? I don't even know. I don't know what a suit. You can dress up to the nines and your motivation be glorifying to God. You can wear a hoodie and your motivation be glorifying to God. It really matters. Why are you doing what you're doing? I think the same thing is true for dimming the lights. Here's what Paul says. Do not be unwise. Understand what the will of the Lord is. Don't be drunk with wine. Don't lose your mind, which is dissipation. But the contrary to that, have your mind filled with the Spirit. And then he talks about what that looks like, or maybe how it happens. Ephesians 5:19. Speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord, and giving thanks for all things to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. His word there is, you do this to one another. You sing to one another. and you speak to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. One of the ways that I think we build up the body is when we are making eye contact as we sing. As we sing like Amazing Grace, saved a wretch like me, I am preaching that to you as I sing that. And you are receiving that from me, and you're preaching it right back to me. We're going to close today. I think you plan to close with gratitude, and just like my heart's overwhelmed with what God has done. And when I look at you and I sing that, I'm actually living out Paul's words. I am speaking to you in psalms, in hymns, and spiritual songs, which we get more when we have a sort of a semicircle. We can actually see one another and sing to one another.
And when we can see one another.
And that's the dimming the lights thing. Yeah. When we dim the lights, the intentionality is I don't want you looking at other people. I don't want you to be distracted by other people. When I think Paul would say, no, that's actually the main event, is the people around you. What would you say to that?
Let's go back to men not singing. If I'm looking at you, not you necessarily. If I'm looking, you're different.
I've been.
If I'm looking at you, am I making you want to sing right now? Would you want to sing?
Not right now, no. But if there was music, and we're sitting next to each other in church, for instance, and I can hear you singing, being led by the music leader, and I can hear you singing, and what as a very amateur musician, not a musician at all, but as an amateur singer who can barely hit a note, I'm trying. If you're singing next to me and you've got a beautiful voice, I'm going to be drawn into your singing, and I'm going to try to key off of what you're doing as somebody that doesn't know how to sing, and harmonize in whatever way I'm able to. And I think that is what Paul's getting at there. Yeah, I would want to sing. If you're looking at me and we're singing together with this Christ exalting song, yeah, I think I would actually.
So that's where this all kind of works. When you look at it as a holistic thing, I think we're actually on the same page here. Yeah. It's just, how many ways,
right? How
many avenues are there to get there?
That's right.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, there's something spiritual about hearing a congregation sing together.
Yeah.
My argument is that when the lights are up high and we're just, I always go back to I was raised Reformed, and it was just the piano, four people with a microphone, and a lady who didn't know how to use a tambourine.
We went to the same church.
Let's see. Speaking of ticks, but there was nothing about that necessarily made me want to sing, per se. Where when I hear our congregation, and I don't think we have at our church, and I'm guessing we're weird and different, I guess, but we don't have an issue as far as with men singing. I mean,
Praise
men are the ones leading.
That's great.
In so many ways.
Are you
physically, and you see the hands fly up. It's usually the men who start that, which is just a testament to our
praise the Lord,
the men in our church as well. But
do you feel like, just to go back to the previous conversation, do you feel like you're intentionally or unintentionally singing in keys that are comfortable for your men to sing with you in?
No, I've got a high voice.
I know you do.
I do a lot of Phil Wickham, Brandon Lake stuff.
So then you should have a lot of tenors in your church?
No.
So how are your guys singing?
Everything is relative. And so something high for me, dropped an octave, is right in their comfort zone. The areas that I start to get into trouble a lot of times, I find, is when I drop it a step and a half, thinking that I'm
serving the guys to give them a better range.
Yep. And now
at this point it's still too high, but it's going to be too low.
Exactly. Now they have a funny area that they're kind of
right.
Where do we go with this?
What would you do if the guys in your church weren't singing?
I would engage them more personally.
Sort of like offline.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe there's a lot of different reasons why they might not be singing per se.
That's right.
I can sing. I can worship along with. Great example, Meredith Andrews. I've had the pleasure of playing with Meredith a few times, and
amazing.
She has a way of bringing people in to worship. Well, if you've ever met her, she's also one of the sweetest people you will ever meet. Anyway, well, okay, now knowing her as a person, I'm naturally able to follow where she's leading when it comes to music.
Interpersonal relationships being a significant factor in drawing people into singing.
Yep.
That's really good. I think that's really good.
Yep.
That's really good.
And then there's also, when I say I'm a worship leader, I mean it in the sense that, okay, if somebody's not engaging in the music portion of it, what else is happening in their life?
Uh-huh.
What's that roadblock here?
Yeah.
The other thing, though, and I'm going to push back on this, is
you're not allowed to push back on
okay, well,
I'm sorry.
This
away.
Will be my first and only
Don't listen to
podcast with you
Swing
guys.
away. You can push back all you want.
Is American culture, we are willing to worship to a certain point until we start to get uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about bringing a sacrifice, a lot of times we just think, oh, well, our sacrifice is going to be Cain's sacrifice and not Abel's sacrifice.
Yeah.
I'll give to the point of until
it's uncomfortable.
Yep,
sure.
Exactly.
We should be more like David and say, I could be even more undignified than this.
Yep.
Because your heart is totally unburdened, whatever. And so you're worshiping with wild, reckless abandon is how we should be thinking about it. And so what you're saying is if there's somebody that's out there and will only worship to a certain level, and that level is where they feel comfortable, they're not fully surrendered to God in that moment.
Exactly. And there's so many different ways than just your voice.
Yeah.
That you can engage in music.
Yeah.
Whether it's physical, giving your thoughts, being prostrate to God.
And so as a worship leader, if I can, I think what you're getting at is you might see that in your congregation or in some people in your congregation, and then maybe offline you would go and get to the heart issue.
Yeah. Engage. Well, and maybe not even so much into that depth. I think that would be absolutely great. We had over 800 people at our Easter services, and so engaging each one of them per se, but giving them, I would say, just showing them the other avenues to engage.
Sure.
That goes with keys of songs, song choices per se. You guys didn't do a hymn this week. Whatever it might be, are we able to bring a sacrifice of our own edification, of our own preferences?
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Right.
And worship as a body of believers.
Which goes back to something that I'm particularly focused on, is this idea of getting away from Sunday is just about me and God. I think the more biblical picture is it's me and God and the people of God. It's the gathered community together.
Your week is you and
worship. God. Yeah. And so to come on a Sunday with this idea of not what am I going to receive, but how can I bring my offering to God in such a way that's going to bless his people.
Yeah.
Which is how the offerings of God have always worked. Even throughout the Old Testament, they were given to God, but then used as a means of blessing his people. So you come with that kind of mindset of when I'm singing, I'm not coming. I mean, yeah, I'm hoping the songs are in my range and of my preference or whatever, but my highest prayer and goal is that I will worship well in such a way that also builds up the people of God around me, whether the song is my style or not.
Yeah, well, and that goes to your giving. It goes to your interactions with individuals before and after service.
Right.
I mean, it's all. Again, when we talk about worship, it's just way more than just music.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
If I am worshiping sacrificially, are my finances showing that? Are the way that I treat people showing that? Mm-hmm. Is the way that I volunteer or don't volunteer for things that need to be done within the church reflecting that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, maybe just one or two rapid fire questions. Right?
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about singing in the right key. We talked about lighting. We've talked about the atmosphere, setting an atmosphere that is good for worship with music. One question I have: you talked about some of the artists that or songwriters that you use, and so when it comes to picking the music, what would you say to somebody in your congregation that might say, for instance, you've picked a song written by a group that the song seems to be theologically sound and good and appropriate for that week and goes with the sermon and everything. However, it's written by a group that is out of a church that is borderline heretical or maybe outright heretical. Not to name names because I don't want to sear consciences, but we all have this idea of certain groups that are out there that are just wonderfully gifted with their songwriting and with their ability to just put on a beautiful worship experience. However, that church that they are doing this for is really teaching heresy.
And perhaps that heresy is also adopted by any number of the writers of that song.
Correct.
They just know how to write. They know what the Bible says.
Yeah.
They know how to write lyrics that are moving and true to the Bible, even if that doesn't actually map on to their soul at all.
Yeah, and so, I mean, the vision I have here is that I'm in the pew, and I hear this song, and I love this song, and at the end, I see the credits, and it says, X group out of Y church. And now I go and I start researching them. Man, I want to learn more about these people. I want to hear more of these songs. And then eventually, as that person in the pew, I get to the church and start listening to maybe sermons and then investigating and then find out they have a school, for instance. And I'm like, man, and then now I've gone down this rabbit hole, and maybe it's possible that I get drawn into that heresy. So what would you say, is that a danger? Should we even be worried about that? Is that just dumb?
No, absolutely. I mean, we should always be on guard.
Can we sing that
wolf
song?
in sheep's clothing? Well, more a question of can we versus do we need to?
Okay.
I mean, we're at a point now where there's so much good music. I have a Spotify playlist of potential worship songs, and it is, dozens and dozens and dozens of songs that I would love to introduce to my congregation, but I just don't have the time in a Sunday morning to
sing 50 new songs.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
So maybe we shouldn't. Are you willing to say?
Well, there's that. I'm also gonna. I don't have a solid answer on this aside from God uses broken people.
Yeah.
And if we were to weed out
all the broken people.
Yeah, exactly. We wouldn't have Psalms, that's for sure. I mean, David had was a murderer and then hooked up with the guy's wife.
Sure.
God can use broken people.
Yeah.
Again, that being said, there's so much out there now that we have. I mean, there's 20 different songs on any sermon topic that you have.
Yeah.
We have so many options at this point where there's a hill that I'm not needing to die on.
Okay.
Do you pay attention to the songwriters at all, specifically in your choosing, or is it here's the trajectory of the morning, and this song is biblically solid and maps onto the trajectory? I don't really care at all who wrote this song.
I don't pay attention a whole lot to the songwriters. However, there are a couple red flags that I see, or that I'll look at. If it is one of those churches or writers or whatever it might be, I'll usually scrub it along with my pastor.
That's good. Well, we want to give you an opportunity to say anything you want to say to the people that might be watching or listening. How would you encourage them in this area of music?
I would say, in terms of worship, each one of you are a worship leader to some capacity or another. Whether it's in your family or your circle of friends. If you call yourself a Christian, you are a worship leader, and your time, your energy, and your money are going to reflect what you worship.
Amen.
You can say that you worship God. Let me see it in your life. And in turn, your kids are going to see that in your life. Your friends who might not be believers are going to see that as well. And you have much more powerful influence than you even realize as a worship leader.
Oh, man.
So come to the gathering on Sunday, sing with all your heart and soul and mind and strength to the Lord, and make sure that tracks with the rest of your life.
I love it.
Good.
How can people find you that might be interested in Ryan Zimmer and his company that he has or his music that he's produced?
Well, I kind of did away with most of my social media, but
Steve loves that, by the way.
Nice.
I approve.
Yeah, he approves. Yeah.
I am on Spotify, so if you look me up on Spotify, there's my face that apparently Jeremiah wants to touch.
I want to touch.
Otherwise, my company's website is advancedministrytech.com.
Advanced Ministry
Tech. TECH.com. We're all about serving the local church. So,
as you are doing at North Center today in this podcast, and now we're heading out to worship with our church family. Ryan, you're going to be leading us in the music part. So
looking forward to it.
Yeah, so am I. So looking forward to it. Any last words, Pastor?
Nope. It's good.
All right. Well, thank you, Ryan, for joining us. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you for all of you out there. And remember, Leviathan is bound. Go take his stuff. Until next time.
My papyrus. That's embarrassing.
Did Mickey Mouse get papyrus? My papyrus.
He's going to edit all that out.
I was chasing after the sun.
He's going to edit all that out. Boy, I cannot talk. He's going to edit all that out.
No, that's what I'm saying. If you want to share stories, it's open season, and I'm loaded, man. I'm loaded.
He's going to edit all that out.